Leeds were gifted their first goal against County when Mel Sterling was left totally unmarked in the 6-yard area. The 70th goal of the fullback's career, a remarkable statistic. Leeds' second came after an innocuous clearance from Tony DeRigo. The left-back's clearance found David Batty beating Dean Thomas, and the midfielder then galloped 60 yards all the way to the County penalty area and rammed it in for his second goal of the season. The comfortable victory was sealed with a trademark Leeds free kick, Strachan picking out speed. He headed into the path of Wallace for one of the striker's easiest finishes. County had been outclassed. The win, though, was a relief for Leeds, their first at home since November. David Batty's goal had been a wonderful solo effort and only the third of his career, and goal difference was suddenly becoming even more important. Manchester United had only drawn with Arsenal, so Leeds went back to the top of the table on goal difference, and those 3 goals against Notts County had suddenly become vitally important. But the need for strike cover was equally important, and it was now a certain Frenchman arrived on the scene via South Yorkshire.
I found out basically through the local paper that Sheffield Wednesday were giving a trial to a French player called Eric Cantona. I happened to know him because I'd seen him play for the French under-21, and he'd played very, very well, very well. And Sheffield Wednesday had got him on trial. And then the next thing I read was that they hadn't taken him because at that time the weather was horrendous. They couldn't train outdoors. He'd played for them indoors in some six-a-side or whatever. I don't know if it was training or what. But they'd said, you know, we want to see him playing outside. You can't imagine this now. Can you imagine this now with indoor surfaces, under soil heating on training grounds and so on?
I actually played against him for England under-21s, against France under-21s at Highbury a few years before that. And he was obviously their star man up front, and he was just a powerhouse, you know, even at that age.
He was a fantastic player, but, you know, how can we put it? He had his problems, particularly with coaches, managers and the authorities.
Obviously I knew, but he'd been down at Sheffield Wednesday and played in a game down and scored 7 goals or something in a practice game, and Sheffield Wednesday said they wanted to see him on grass, which were a absolute joke. I
tracked his agent down and found out that he's still staying in a hotel in Sheffield, not far from here. Found him in his room. This was a Friday night, Friday tea time.
I can just remember Eric coming into the home changing room with a bit of growth, and I thought, who's this guy?
He watched a home game. I'm sure that's the case. And we took him on loan that week. We did an agreement with his club, which was to do a loan agreement until there was a date in April which was set as the cut-off date, which all fitted very nicely, but we had to agree a fee in case we wanted to take an option up to buy him. All fitted in very nicely with Chappie's injury and his projected return back to fitness.
We took him in gladly because we knew he could play. We knew he was a good footballer. Yeah, all the lads, we all rallied round and made him welcome.
When he came, the one moment stands out for me incredibly up on this car park that used to be the training ground at Ellen Road. We were playing a game and the goals were moved in to the 18-yard box. So you imagine 20 yards up the pitch. And John Lukic has thrown one out to the right-hand side of the pitch, and Eric Cantona, it's gone over his right-hand shoulder on the halfway line, and he, as it's falling, it hasn't bounced, and he has volleyed it first time straight into the far top corner, 35 yards away, and scored. I've never seen anything like it. And I've looked at that, and I've just stopped. And I'm waiting. And now, if any of the players score a goal like that, you'll go silly, you'll go nuts. Eric just jogged back as if, right, come on, let's just keep going.
he came in to replace Chapman, but he never really did, because Chapman was the old-fashioned Mark Hughes, Joe Jordan. Cantona was the inside forward, flamboyant. So, you know, people said he had that big influence, but I don't think he had as big an influence as people made out, because the machine was already going. I think the machine that Howard put together was already flowing.
Monsieur Eric was interviewed by local reporters in English, and he seemed upbeat about the contribution he felt he could make to Leeds United's season. He did admit he'd had a few problems in France, but said they'd been exaggerated.
He reads poetry, he reads philosophy, he paints, he likes fishing. Yeah, maybe that's different. I hope he's different out there. That's where I hope he's different. What he's like off it, so long as he behaves himself, I don't care.
Je n'ai pas de problème là.
He say that's normal that a trainer wants discipline, and he see no problems about it.
Interest in the French import was very high as Leeds headed to Oldham and Boundary Park.
By the time we got off the bus at Oldham, it was all hell let loose. You know, you thought you'd sign one of those French actors because there was a huge French media presence.
The French international striker arrived on an initial £100,000 loan deal from Nîmes, with the option of a further £900,000 to make the deal permanent. He sat on the bench and watched Leeds record their second league defeat of the season. Paul Bernard, with the first goal after Richard Jobson's header had come back off the post. Leeds had won only once in 14 attempts at Boundary Park since 1928. They were nearly 2 down when Rick Holden struck the woodwork. Cantona then came on for Steve Hodge at the start of the second half. He was soon put through by Strachan. Unlucky he was to be tackled by Andy Barlow just at the crucial moment. An early glimpse of the Frenchman's talent. But Oldham made it 2-0. 2 minutes from time, a great counter-attacking move. Andy Barlow picked out winger Holden and continued his run to finish from inside the 6-yard area. Leeds left empty-handed. Man United returned to the top of the table. Leeds were due to play Aston Villa next, but the game was postponed due to Villa's involvement in the FA Cup. Some friendly matches were arranged against Shelburne of Ireland and IFK Gothenburg of Sweden. The squad was now refreshed, and apart from Chapman, Wilkinson had a full squad to call on when Leeds played their next game against Everton.
Strachan took it off him. Leeds could break here. Cantona in possession and shut ahead of him. He ran straight into trouble in the shape of Watson. But he's given it away. Still Leeds have a lot of players forward. McAllister tried to curl it then. Ebrel made a good tackle. Southall in trouble. A shot turns it back in and it's gone in off the defender. Shot claims the goal, but it hit Keown on the goal line and went in, and Leeds United are in front. 13 minutes into the second half.
Well, good forward play by Gary McAllister. Deflection up in the air. And a good challenge by Colshot. He's not very big, but makes a great challenge. And he's alert, very sharp onto the ball. And enough Keown for a goal.
Picked on by Ablett and Jackson. And the youngster gets his first ever goal in league football to bring Everton level. 20 minutes gone in the second half. A moment Matthew Jackson will remember for the rest of his life.
Yes, Leeds won't be happy with a defender here. 2 players at the far post queuing up to head the ball in, and only Gordon Strachan marking. Not very good defensively from Leeds, but a great moment for the youngster.
We've said it so often from Leeds' point of view that those near-post flick-ons are so difficult to defend, and now they find to their own cost just how difficult. You won't get a closer view than this.
Man United had beaten Crystal Palace 2-0 24 hours earlier, and with Leeds 3 points behind, their rivals also still had a game in hand. The Leeds boss had other worries. He'd been concerned over the situation with his strikers, especially with Wallace picking up a shin injury. He arranged a 1-month loan deal for Tony Agana from Notts County, with John McClelland going the other way. But on the morning of the game against Luton, his two main strikers were named in the starting 11. It's a match Leeds must win to keep pace in the Championship race with Manchester United, and they're boosted by the return of top scorer Lee Chapman, just 6 weeks after breaking his wrist in the FA Cup tie against Manchester United. Chapman, as you can see, has a light protective shield on the wrist, but is determined to get back to the action as quickly as possible, and he's in it now. Oh, and that's neat. And Strachan plays the ball into space, and Batty, who scored a goal in the last home game from that sort of an angle, got involved again. Now it's Wallace. Still Wallace, leads with men in the middle. It's coming to the back post to speed and right across the face of goal and just beyond the far upright. Batty, good knock through from McAllister. Now it's Speed, and here's Wallace, who might just get in. Appeals for a handball, not awarded by Mr. Flood, however, against Dreyer, but the pass out wasn't too clever. Hughes trying to make something of it, gets the throw in. And Dorigo stays down, holding his knee, and Alan Sutton, the Leeds physio, immediately dashes down the touchline to tend to Dorigo's needs. Tony Dorigo hobbles away to the dressing room, and it's a moot point as to whether Leeds will try and give him time for treatment to get back on, or whether they'll introduce either Cantona or Agana. And indeed, Leeds are going to bring on Cantona straight away. So the French international comes on for his home debut, having featured as a substitute at Oldham and in a full game at Everton last week. The shame is, of course, it's because Dorigo is injured. And the reorganisation has taken Gary Speed into a left-back position, and he's got some defending to do now straight away. This is Pembridge, and a flashing drive from the Welshman Mark Pembridge. Luton just coming into it a bit more, perhaps as Leeds reorganise. And Hughes has found James in a good supporting role, and the ball in, still not clear. Batty doesn't get a decisive touch on it, and Pembridge has his second effort in a minute. Lukic again just lobs it down the middle of the field. McAllister is through. Here's Cantona. He could get his first goal, and he's ballooned it over the top. And really, for a French international, he should have scored, and that would have settled him down so much. It's a glorious chance, this, over the top of the defender from McAllister. Cantona thinks about it and then spoons it over the crossbar. But Leeds sweep forward again, and now James is in trouble against Wallace. Wallace might score off the bar, and Chapman can't get in, and it's not going for Leeds at the moment. Sterland and Strachan. A weak pass from Strachan, it really was. McAllister comes into it. He's going through. McAllister might score. Cantona must surely. Yes! Vive la France! And McAllister really is the creator. He did all the damage to the Luton defence. And Eric Cantona says, thank you very much indeed, and gets his first goal as a Leeds United player. Strachan underneath this, but Priest had got back to dispossess the Scot, and it's still Priest, and now has a chance for Luton. It's gone a foot wide from Brian Steen, as Luton have come right at them, and now it's played long, and this time they're onside, and the goalkeeper Sutton has to use his head in more ways than one. And Cantona gets another header up, and it's sliced away for Chapman's volley, and it's welcome back Lee Chapman. A real striker's goal, and number 15 of the season for Lee Chapman surely justifies his return to the side and settles the day for Leeds United. That's beautifully taken. It had been a stuttering performance, but Manchester United could only draw at Coventry. So after they'd also drawn their game in hand against Chelsea in midweek, the gap was now just 2 points, with the teams having played the same number of matches. After the game, Cantona spoke to me through his interpreter. Eric, you must be very pleased at scoring your first goal for Leeds United.
Content, le premier but de Leeds United?
Yes, content.
Happy.
I'm very happy.
Yes.
For the team.
Très content.
For the team. For me, after.
And Leeds, you think a good team?
Yes, very good team.
With Cantona scoring and helping to set up Chapman, some of Howard Wilkinson's faith in the Frenchman had been repaid. He was, though, on the bench for the next game against Aston Villa, the rearranged match. It meant that Tony Garner got a start instead. Leeds had closed the gap on Manchester United to 2 points, and Ron Atkinson was still saying they were chief title contenders. It was an opportunity for Leeds to go top as Man United prepared for their League Cup semi-final with Middlesbrough. They survived an early scare. Cyril Regis' goal disallowed for a push on Chris Fairclough. He then clashed heads with Mel Sterland. Fairclough had a nasty injury. The referee was involved again when he ruled Daly and Atkinson had handled inside the box under pressure from Gary McAllister. The normally reliable Strachan missed his spot kick for only the third time in 21 attempts. The game went up a gear when Cantona replaced Garner with 25 minutes to go, the Frenchman bringing 2 good saves from Spink as Leeds hunted a winner. It was a frustrating afternoon though, with Sterland and Fairclough both spending the night in hospital after their clash. When Leeds travelled to White Hart Lane, they were boosted by the news that both Mel Sterland and Chris Fairclough were OK after that head clash in the Villa game, and also by the return of one Rod Wallace.
By then, we'd, both result and performance-wise, we'd stuttered a bit. I remember when we got promoted from the second division, we had a similar period. I think at one stage in the season, we were 10 or 11 or 12 points ahead going into Easter time or whenever. We had a period where we weren't picking up the wins, but came through in the end.
We really did try and keep in the moment. I know golfers say the same thing, but football, it is just about the next game, and all we can ever do is go out there and prepare correctly and give it your best shot. But certainly, trying to keep out the forces outside of the press and the fans and everything else got more and more difficult, but that's natural.
Wilkinson dug deep. He reminded his players that they were on course, and what was in their favour was that although points had been dropped against Everton and Villa, Manchester United coincidentally had dropped points against Chelsea and Coventry. Both sides were feeling the pressure. 3 days before, Manchester United faced Middlesbrough in the first leg of their League Cup semi-final. Leeds faced Spurs. Wilkinson decided to start with the returning Wallace, and the striker proved his boss right when he latched onto a batty long ball to give Leeds the lead. United had faced some early pressure from Spurs though, and the home side was soon level, a move involving all the Pauls. Paul Walsh won the ball, it then found its way to Paul Stewart, he picked out Paul Allen, all square. Leeds had another problem though.
I played the first half and my ankle was just getting worse and worse and worse, and I came off after the first half and said to the manager, I said, Gaffer, this is no good. I'm in pain, and it takes a lot for me to not want to play football. And he just said to me, not a problem, Mel. You give it a go. You give it a good bash, and we'll fetch you off. And John Newsom replaced me, which he did well actually. He scored a goal from a corner, which was a great goal.
It was only Newsom's second appearance of the season, but his header from Strachan's corner sent the travelling support wild. Looking to wrap things up, Cantona was sent on. Strachan was in control. It was his ball to the substitute which drew the Spurs defence, the Frenchman slipping it to the charging McAllister, who cleverly steered the ball beyond Torsved. It had been a confidence-boosting victory for Leeds, and it took them back top of the league.
After being involved in so many games, coming in for treatment, I had 4 operations on my ankle. It was just so frustrating, and you've seen the lads train, and Leeds United are buzzing. It's very, very hard to digest.
Leeds went 2 points clear, and although Manchester United had 2 games in hand, those points in the bag were absolutely vital. 4 days later, Leeds were headed for the capital again, and with Manchester United playing the second leg of their League Cup semi-final, United had the chance of going 5 points clear with a win against QPR. Leeds started well enough with Gary Speed putting away Sterling's cross, but the mood soon changed quickly. First, Les Ferdinand levelled things up. Then Chris White was sent off for a trip on Andy Sinton, and by the end of the day, Clive Wilson made it 4-1.
But you had all these experts coming out with about 10 games to go, and they print Arsenal's fixture list and Man United's fixture list and Liverpool's fixture list and Leeds' fixture list, and then all these experts come out and said somebody's going to get 84 and they're going to get 83 and they'll get 85. And if you start looking at you're playing a weak team potentially, and Man United or somebody might have a hard team, they're going to lose, we're going to win, and it doesn't happen. It's like, don't do it. Just get on with your game and try and be focused on what you're going to do.
Leeds' title ambitions were hanging by a thread. Yes, they were still top, but they'd only a 2-point advantage over Man United and had played 3 games more. Leeds had managed only 4 points out of 9, while the other United had qualified for the League Cup final after beating Middlesbrough. QPR had also put 4 past Manchester City in their previous game, all but ending that club's push, while Sheffield Wednesday was still hanging around. They'd been 3rd or 4th since the end of September. 3 days later, Leeds welcomed Wimbledon to Ellen Road. Gary Speed started at left back and his place in midfield was taken by Cantona. Despite his bullish approach after the defeat at QPR, Wilkinson couldn't really hide the fact that a big performance was needed, especially from his more experienced players. The players reacted, and although the game started slowly, by midway through the first half the contest was all but over. Wallace and Batty linking well to provide an easy finish for Lee Chapman. It had been 2 weeks since the number 9's last goal, but within 4 minutes he doubled the lead. Wallace gifted the ball before picking out the reliable Chapman to head home. Wind forward another 4 minutes, Strachan gets himself behind the defence after linking with Newsom, and the Scot had 2 strikers to pick from. This time Rod Wallace put the ball past Hans Segers. Leeds left the pitch at half-time to a standing ovation. Strachan was rested in the second half and Wimbledon pulled a go back through Paul Miller, beating Lukic at the second attempt. The game was secured when Cantona robbed John Scales and raced through to calmly slot past the Dutch keeper. The final scoreline was slightly flattering as Leeds had stuttered a little in the second half. But Chapman was able to complete his hat-trick from a well-worked cross from Carl Schutt. Not Chapman's most convincing header, they all count. It was a terrific result and proved a vital boost to the title challenge. There was even better news to come in midweek with the news that Manchester United had lost the first of their 3 games in hand against Nottingham Forest, and this wouldn't be the last time that Forest would have a major influence on the season's outcome.
If you've got 2 games in hand, you've got to win them games. And you know in football, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Anybody can upset you. You know, you've got 2 games, you've got to win them. Sometimes you're probably not winning none of them. And then it's all changed again. But we just kept going. We just kept going.
Wallace. Dangerous. Turned in by Chapman. It had to be. The supreme goal scorer has finally broken the deadlock. 17 minutes to go. Lee Chapman's 19th goal of the season.
Well, it was a lovely little ball played that actually got a deflection there. I think it was off Bold, and there was Big Chapman to knock it in. Let's have a look at it again here, Alan. You can see that was a deflection. Played it into the path, lovely, of Lee Chapman, little side footer. But it all stems, you know, from a tackle way back, just over the halfway line.
Still problems. O'Leary gets a header in, and then Adams kept it in play. An unusual ball, but it's effective. Right, finding Merson, and Merson again. It's the equaliser. Highbury celebrates, and a moment of pure genius by Paul Merson.
Well, we talked about offside today, and this is one way to beat the offside trap. Go alone. He flicked it up, carried on, And there he was, got on the end of it. I think it was David O'Leary had a little hand to play in that. But a lovely finish. He certainly wasn't offside because there was a Leeds United player just playing him on, just out your pitch at the moment. I think it was Lee Chapman.
It began to seem that Leeds just couldn't prosper from their greatest rival dropping points. Although Manchester United could only draw with Wimbledon, Leeds simply didn't take advantage. West Ham arrived in the midst of a relegation battle, and Wilkinson told his players not to be afraid to go out and enjoy the game. It was not particularly an afternoon that Lee Chapman would enjoy, however. Perhaps the only man who did relish the day was Czech goalkeeper Ludek Mikloško. Saving here from Cantona. Mikloško produced a series of excellent saves. The next one from Chapman. West Ham were hanging on doggedly. And when Mikloško made this stunning save from McAllister, you somehow knew it was going to end 0-0. Wilkinson praised the Hammers' defence and said he didn't feel Leeds were running out of steam, that the players were doing everything asked of them. Their draw and Manchester United's draw, this time at QPR, meant the gap was still 2 points, with the other United having the 2 games in hand. Another worry was that Sheffield Wednesday were also on a run. They were gradually catching up on the rails almost unnoticed, but the table would change again. Before the trip to Main Road, Leeds had seen themselves slip from first to second. Manchester United had beaten Norwich in midweek, and yet again Leeds, with a win, could go top.
We went to Man City, and in my mind, it was a big game for us. But I decided not to approach it in that way with the players. It was a big game for us because I felt if we got a result in the Man City game, it would be the platform for the games that were to come.
Wilkinson once said, beware a team that hasn't won for a while, and City hadn't scored in their previous 4 games. Leeds were pleased to welcome back Chris White into defence with Mel Sterland out for the rest of the season. That was important. Unfortunately, though, the defence stood still at City's opener. Andy Hill powering a header in from Mark Brennan's corner. Leeds almost levelled things up. A Strachan cross, a Gary Speed header brilliantly saved by Tony Coton. Up to now it had been an even contest, but then Steve McMahon sent Mike Sheeran through. He beat the onrushing Lukic to make it 2-0. After the break, Leeds might have had one back after a great ball in from Tony DeRigo, and they kept battling away. But the final result was settled after a lovely solo effort from Irish international Niall Quinn, taking on White and beating Lukic at his near post. 5 minutes later, McMahon again sent Brennan in to seal the victory. Man United's odds to win the title were slashed.
Well, I told the players in the dressing room, look, there'll be huge speculation now about this result, particularly as Manchester United had a good result. Get on the bus, say nothing to anybody, and we'll talk about all this on Monday.
I do remember that in the Main Road as well at the time. Great crowd. It's a big game for us, and that was hugely disappointing. And that I have no doubt.
We've got 5 games left, and I've decided that this team that I'm going to tell you will start those 5 games unless we have injuries. One of those games I'll make one change if, providing we don't have injuries. And the target is this. We have to win 4 out of those 5, and we have to get a point at Liverpool. And the reason we have to do that is because that means if we can do that, because I'm confident we can win the last game, if we can go to Sheffield United and win, by then I think Manchester United could have to go to Liverpool needing a draw or even a win. We don't know any of that, but if we can make that Liverpool game an important game, I don't see them, Liverpool, even though they weren't playing at the best, giving them a result that afternoon.
The Man City defeat might have seemed like a disaster for the Leeds boss, but results during the week meant that despite the bookmakers shortening the odds on Man United winning the title, the season was far from over. Midweek draws in the Manchester derby and also for Sheffield Wednesday at Coventry meant two things. One, Sheffield Wednesday was still 5 points behind, and two, Manchester United were only 2 points ahead as Chelsea headed to Ellen Road. Leeds once again knew that victory would take them top. The roller coaster of a season was proving unpredictable, less so the form of Gordon Strachan. Another penetrative break set at Rod Wallace for his 9th goal of the campaign. It had taken Leeds 55 minutes to break down the Chelsea defence, but once that goal went in, Leeds were well on top. Steve Clarke was indeed lucky to stay on the pitch after that cynical challenge on Strachan, given only a yellow card. Leeds were now finding space behind the back four with some wonderful passing. And with 3 minutes to go, this clinical move was rounded off. McAllister found Cantona, and Chapman had the easiest finish of his life. Chapman's 20th of the season. Cantona had been on the pitch for only 2 minutes before his involvement, but his appearance will always be remembered for the Leeds' 3rd goal. Strachan's quick throw found the Frenchman, and the rest, as they say, is history. Pure magic. Brilliant control from the Frenchman, flicking it over Paul Elliott and smashing in the volley. A cult hero. Many said it was the goal of the season at Ellen Road.
We couldn't afford to pay the fee that we had to pay, and I remember that deadline coming up, and it coincided with a home game before the deadline was something on the Monday, and he came on, I think, and scored one of his 3 goals. Was a terrific sole effort where he got it in the box, flicked it up in the air over somebody, ran round and volleyed it in. And I remember Leslie Silver, the chairman, because the crowd went wild, and I remember Leslie digging me in the ribs and said, "That's just cost me £1 million."
We knew he'd always got that in his locker. He used to do that regularly on the training pitch. Some of the things he used to do were absolutely fantastic. And obviously to do it on the training pitch and then to go on the big stage, as we say, and do it, shows what a footballer he was.
That Chelsea result certainly kept the pressure on Manchester United. Wilkinson knew his greatest rivals would face a severe test when they played 4 games in 6 days. They won the first of them against Southampton to go 2 points clear. Next, Manchester would head to Luton.